So it's Monday morning. We had a major storm on Priceless Farms last night, and luckily nobody's houses collapsed, although it felt like it was going to. It was really, really strong winds. We had at least 7 large trees that actually snapped and fell over. So we've got crews cleaning up those trees, which is fine. This happens. You get these crazy storms. At least once a year you have to have the most powerful storm of the year, and I'm pretty sure that was it. So that's good. Now we're moving into harvesting. And so we're standing in one of the Moringa fields here. We're on our way to one of the community farmers to go and take a look at how they're doing that. I'm going to explain a little bit about the technique of harvesting because it's very important in terms of getting maximum yields from your plants. There's a few tricks and techniques that you need to know when you're managing a Moringa crop so that it regrows with more and more Moringa production. This is the key to a good business model when you're farming Moringa. If you don't understand these tricks and if you cut it the wrong way, we've gone through this. We've experienced it firsthand. So everything I'm going to teach you is directly from firsthand experience that I've gone through personally and with our staff. And we believe now what you're about to see, the way we're doing it now, we believe that this is at least the best that we have come to now. But you never know. We might be able to find new techniques that can even improve the yields beyond this. But however, we're quite confident that this is where we're at, that we're in a really good position, that we've reached a really good technique. So we're just going to go over this way, walking through this land. You can see we have this one almost looks like a monoculture, but it is intercropped with indigenous trees. This is a site that we have on lease. And so our technique here for planting and establishing the Moringa was a little bit more heavy, a little bit more intensive, meaning that we haven't planted as many fruit trees and we haven't planted as many support species into the landscape. We're planting only the boundaries for windbreak and wind cover, as well as fuel and construction timber with lyra and other hardwoods and softwoods. But in terms of the crops on this particular plot, because it's a lease plot, our intention as a company is to maximize the yield of Moringa. So it's still an organic plot, it's still a biodiverse plot, but there's just less tree cover, which means potentially we can get a lot more Moringa production. Moringa loves full sun, and so the heavy, intensive forestry areas, they do not produce the same volumes. And that's why it's so important to understand the different techniques that we're teaching, not only about how to cut the Moringa, but how to cut the support species as well. But we'll get to that another time. Right now, let's focus on Moringa. Follow me. Okay, so as we're moving through the garden, you see that there's different quality of Moringa regrowth. Regrowth is the material which is coming back, the new stuff that's coming back after it's been harvested. Pretty much you clear all the leaves off, and this one right here is a primary example of a maximum yielding tree. This has probably been harvested 3 to 4 times, and it's been pruned just perfectly. So we're looking at, between a meter and a half for the main prunings, and you can see all the growth that's coming off of here. Every season you want to prune more and more stems off of the main branch so that those stems themselves also become main branches. Okay, so the first harvest, you only have one stalk with branches coming off, and you harvest that. The second harvest, these other shoots that come out end up becoming your next harvest. But if you prune them at about 1 meter or a meter and a half, then they also become primary supports. So if you look down here, you can see all these stems coming out, and it looks like there's about 3 plants in one area, but I believe this is just one tree which has been split, and there's at least 3 dozen fresh shoots coming off of here. And so all of these little shoots, I'll just pick one off. All of these little shoots, that is your harvest, that is your yield, that is your production. You see a yellow leaf, you pick it off, this goes into your pouch and it goes off to the facility as quickly as possible. And we're quite lucky today. This harvest is going to be really, really nice because last night we had a storm that was a sustained storm for at least 8 hours of solid, heavy rains and winds. So this is as fresh as it gets. You literally cannot get fresher Moringa than this. Perfect for a morning snack. Okay, so on our walk, we came across yet another tree that fell down in the storm last night, and this is a very beautiful older moringa tree. It looks like it's about 1.5 years old, maybe 2 years old, and it's fallen over in the storm because we've had so much rain recently that the soils are very, very loose, and so when you have sustained heavy rains, they become even looser. And the root system obviously just gave out on this, and we're just going to replant it right now. So you guys dig a pit right here, and then we're going to replant this tree. Now, interestingly, this exposes the roots of the moringa, and this is yet another product of the moringa tree. Now, we do not have very much experience with the roots, okay? But it is one of the industry products for the plant, and it has many known medicinal uses. It also is known for having a higher concentration of chemicals, which means you're not supposed to eat a lot of it, but people are eating it as tea, and there are some claims being made around its efficacy with respect to disease control and disease management. And funny enough, it actually smells and tastes almost identical to horseradish. And that is why they also call moringa the horseradish tree, because when you smell this root and even when you taste it, it tastes and smells almost identical to horseradish. So maybe this is an alternative to horseradish wasabi. Maybe we can make a product called mosabi, and all of a sudden everybody's having more nutritious wasabi in their sushi dishes. So we're gonna dig a hole. We're gonna dig a hole, and then we're gonna plant the tree again, and then we're gonna keep it because it's a good tree. It's a hardy tree, and it can survive. It can totally survive. How do you say saving in Luganda? Kuyamba. Kuyamba. Rolling. You guys rolling. Get a hand. 1, 2, 3, up! Okay, now tell them to fill it in. So keep filling until the soil comes up to here, right? And then stomp it. Now press it down with your feet. Yeah. And on the outside edge as well. And then bring the soil to the edges where the roots were as well. Okay, 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes and you're done. Okay, so here I'm with one of our farmers. His name's Ibaba. He's a senior farmer. He's an excellent agricultural farmer. He plants amazing rows. He manages his crops really well. He's got the right type of work ethic in order to stay ahead of the weeds. Staying ahead of the weeds means that you're weeding enough to let the moringa grow out of its infancy, and then also to keep it growing throughout the different harvest seasons. So here he has his little simple tarp that he puts on the ground. He has a very clean sack, brand new sack, and then he's harvesting the moringa, just the leaves that we want. If you can see inside there, he's getting only the green leaves, and so he's going and he's just picking them directly from the stems. Some people will go and they'll harvest the whole stalk for speed. What we're really going for on Priceless Farms is quality, and so we're picking only those that have absolutely no yellow leaves. This saves us a lot of time. As you can see, the crop has a lot of yellow leaves right now because it's overgrown. Okay, we didn't want to harvest because we were still working on our drying facilities, so we weren't ready to harvest. So we said, you know what, let it grow up. Let's pick the perfect leaves, take just the top ones basically, and then we'll do that. And then as he's finished, at the end of the day, he'll come with his panga or his machete or his knife, and he'll cut them and prune them exactly the way we want them to, and he'll knock off all the lower branches, and that will reset that area of his crop to begin that growth process again. And so right now I'm just going to send him on his way because they're waiting for Moringa down at the facility. But you can just see how easy the job is. And if you're a small family, if you think about this from the family perspective, if you're a small family depending on agriculture, Moringa gives you 4 to 5 harvests a year in tropical climates where you get 2 rainy seasons. And we've gone even further, and we've added irrigation systems on the site. So we're expecting a minimum of 4 to 5 harvests every year here, static. And so here, hold on, Ibaba, let me see. Let me see. Good stuff, man. Thank you. So you can see here, it is absolutely pristine Moringa, and he's picking only the freshest, cleanest leaves. There's very, very few yellow leaves, like you'll see here. There's one yellow leaf here, but the percentage of yellow leaves is well below 2%. And this is what's going into our facility. This is what's turning into the powder that we're selling onwards to all our different buyers. And we're going to maintain that quality throughout the lifetime of this farm. We're going to keep producing the highest quality Moringa in the world, and just keep our quality control measures as high as possible and improve over time with organic fertilization techniques and good irrigation techniques, and of course community management techniques. So Ibaba has a nice house here. He's been with us for about 3 years. He's been through all the tribulations and the trials that we've been through before we found the market for Moringa. When we were growing staple crops, we went through about 4 or 5 drought seasons. So he knows what it's like to have crops like maize and beans and other things which die off, where you don't get any income at all. Moringa doesn't do that. Moringa is one of the strongest plants in the world in terms of climate resilience. So when we get a drought season, you don't lose the crop. You get a lower production, but you're still getting those harvests. Okay, and so you're spreading out the money, and you're getting much more money. At the rate that we're going to pay farmers like him who live off of our land, in order for us to get outgrowers. Now these are what we would call ingrowers, okay? This is our cluster farm model. The cluster farmers, or the community farmers who are with us now, they're inside the corporate system. But when we go and we want to expand production beyond our boundaries, we start to get what's called outgrowers. And the price that we believe we're going to be able to pay for this maize on a per kilo basis is almost 18 times the value of maize. So just think about that. Traditionally, if you're a family who's dependent on maize, which is not drought resistant, and often you're losing your whole crop, whether it's to pests or to climate or to all kinds of different problems, you're getting 18 times less than Moringa, which is giving you a stable 3, 4, or even 5 harvests a year, depending on the weather. And guess what? It's actually producing as much or more than maize, and you don't need chemical inputs, okay? You can grow Moringa. All of our outgrowers will have to do it organically, but you can grow it with locally sourced manures, locally sourced green manures, and there's all different types of techniques that we're going to teach them to give and produce the highest quality, high yielding Moringa crops. And this is how we're taking people out of poverty, and Moringa is just the beginning. We can intercrop Moringa with so many different crops. So this is a beautiful thing. We've reached the stage now where we have a production facility. We're saying, bring it on, guys. Let's take this in and let's produce some serious cash flow, some serious revenues, and then start to expand that system out to the greater region. Okay, so here is a freshly harvested, overgrown Moringa. So as I mentioned, and as you can see, this Moringa has grown too high, and that's because we weren't ready for harvest. So aside from that, we see that there's a lot of yellowing leaves. You can also see a lot of the yellow leaves have fallen off. Okay, so what's happened is Ibaba, who's the farmer who owns this garden, he has come along and he's picked just the tops. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 little perfectly green leaves being taken off, and he's left the rest on the plant. Okay, so stage 1 of harvesting, he's picking off all of the leaves. Now some people will come and they'll harvest the whole thing exactly where they want it to be, and they'll take big bundles. And for us at this time, we're deciding to do it a little bit more sophisticated because we don't want these yellow leaves. We don't want to have to deal with these in our facility. And so we've decided that our favorite cut is basically at waist level, okay? And because we're dealing with all different types of educational backgrounds, and we have over I think there's about 9 to 12 different tribes living together on our farm, we try to use the body as a measurement tool, keeping in mind this is different for everybody, but we say generally between the belly button and the waist, okay? So that kind of gives us a good range. So I have my knife here, and they use machetes. Knives are really good because they're smaller, they're easier to work with. And we're gonna cut upwards, okay? If you're cutting down, what ends up happening is, and I'll just try to give you an example, you can get a running bark, and you don't want that, okay? So if you're cutting down, sometimes this is gonna happen, and that's not good. So you wanna cut up like that, okay? And now this is exactly at my belly button level, okay, which is quite good. All of these little notches here, even when I pull this one off, right from where I pulled it off is where you're going to get a new shoot, okay? And also, by cutting it at this height, you don't want to go lower. We used to harvest very low. We said cut it at knee level. And what we've discovered by trying different heights is when you cut it at knee level, it takes much longer to start to regrow. And the theory that we have there is that there's a lot of nutrition in the stem and in the plant. So the less stem that you have, the less nutrition you have to reset and restart that new growth. So we've been now moving to cutting it at waist level. Now notice this branch here is becoming another main branch, okay? So I'm actually gonna keep that one there. And this has 1, 2, 3, 4 notches, okay? Now maybe only 3 of those will go because this is gonna dry up, but this is now 3 more. And so that's where you get that sort of fingered effect where it's now producing more and more each season. And I'm gonna do the same to this branch right below. Notice that I cut it right below the last living branch, which has yellow leaves. This is good mulch. So this is going back down to the garden. You could also feed this to your chickens. You can also eat this. This is a great home product for the farmers. So this is a lot of moringa. If you look at the crop, all of this has just been harvested. So there's a lot of extra material here which can be used. And we can also decide to process this very rudimentarily. And they can add it to their chickens. They can add it to your pigs, your goats, your cows, your fish, whatever it is. Moringa is useful all around on the farm. Okay, so I've cut my lower 3. They're all generally in the same range. Now I'm coming to my last stalk, which is the main stalk. And I'm going to come up a little bit higher. This is going just above my belly button. And I'm going to cut that off with an upstroke. So you see the stem. When I stroke up, there's no running, okay? You can still even see that there is some breakage, but it's not running down the stem. And so this is a very clean cut. Now I can look at the, I can actually try to plant this. Some people suggest that you can plant this and you would just plant it like cassava. I'm not gonna go all out, but there's the idea of that. And now I'm just gonna look at the tree, and remember this all takes 5 seconds, 10 seconds, okay? So I can move on to the next one. That one's done, this one, done. Okay, so there you can see, we just finished cutting 3, and they're looking good. Even you can see this one here is already sending up a new shoot. I don't know how well you can see that in the video. I'm trying to use my leg as a contrast. And so if you look at this moringa here, you're going to get shoots coming out. Typically the shoots start about 30 centimeters out of the ground. So I'm thinking there's going to be at least 25 new shoots coming out of these 2 stems. You can see this one is a single stem. Okay, so that's the first time this one has been harvested. Now this may be the first time this one was harvested too, but by the way that it was growing in the very early stages, sometimes when they're young, the tips get broken off by wind, by people's feet or legs, or even, you know, dogs or animals that are moving through the landscape, or during the weeding process, you might hit a bush, and, you know, so this one made its own branch early on as in its seedling stage. and this one was growing all the way up. So now this one is stage 1, this one is also stage 1, and this one here, it has 4 stalks now. So if you count, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 stalks. Look at this, a praying mantis just eating the fly. Right here where I am, the praying mantis is eating the fly. Can you zoom in on that? I'll put my shirt as a backdrop. Look at that, that's beautiful. This is biodiversity at its max. Small is big, you know, and this is the big thing about organic agriculture. If this was a crop that was sprayed in chemicals, you wouldn't see the fly or the praying mantis. And this is a baby praying mantis. Can you see him? That was interesting. You know, I was just saying that because this is an organic crop and an organic farm, you have all this biodiversity and you're just seeing it on the plants. You're surrounded by bugs, you're surrounded by insects. This is a very good thing. This is what you want on a farm. As long as you're keeping a balance between your crop and those bugs, you're getting so much fertility. When he's done eating this fly, it might not seem like much, but he's dropping it on the ground. And even the praying mantis might also get killed, and he's also going to drop on the ground. So when you think about plants and you think about food, what you're actually getting is, you know, the apex predator is the tree. The apex predator is the forest. And in this case, we're eating the forest. We're eating the tree. The tree is the food. We're eating tree leaves in Moringa. And it's feeding off of all of these nutrients. And those nutrients are coming from those insects, from this life and death struggle that's going on with all these little bugs. And we made the big mistake as humans to start to think that we're separate from that. We're not. We are completely almost identical to this fly and this bug trying to survive on this plant, on this little planet of ours. And the more we realize that we're part of that web of life, the sooner we're going to fix the way the world is going right now. So there's a quick little segment there. Hope you enjoyed it. We're going to go and do some more. Stay tuned. Okay, so here we are. We're going to clean this crop. You can see that the top sections have been harvested. There's new shoots coming. And this is a unique one because it's already very low. And so I'm actually not going to cut this one. But what I do need to do is get rid of all the lower branches that have already lost their leaves, okay? And this is very similar in a floral shop. When you remove dead flowers or branches that are dying, you encourage the new growth to come along. So I'm just going to whip them down. It's just like a downward whip action. And they just pop right off, okay? These little branches. And so there's anything with yellowing leaves, these older leaves, we don't want those. We want them to go back down to the ground. You feed them to the bugs, and lo and behold, you can see the new growth is already coming. So this is what we're going for. The new production is coming out of each and every shoot, and the plant will continuously do that. Some people say 10 years, but we'll probably replant every 5 years. So now, it's already at the right level, and I already see the shoots are coming up. So I'm going to leave this one, and this is all fresh growth. This one's a little bit old. Oh, see, I ruined that whole stalk. So I'm going to come where it was ruined, bent over that means, and I'm going to cut up, and now I have a lower one. That's fine. It's going to regrow. It's going to give us good production. This one as well, overgrown, much higher. I'm going to have to cut it, and I'm going to go right, you know, this one, I'm going to go a bit higher, because a lot of these stems here are looking really good. So I'm going to cut them and keep this one a little bit higher. I do downstrokes sometimes because I have an extremely sharp knife. Okay, so now I'm going to clean it. Clean off all the yellowing older branches. And you know, you can do this with apple trees in the tropics. You can actually take off all the leaves on an apple tree, and it thinks it's winter time, and then all of a sudden when it grows back, it'll put the flowers on, and you may get apple production. So there's 2 different trees, 2 different techniques, but it's okay because I'm going for production, and I know this is going to produce very, very well. And it's okay to be a little bit higher. It's okay to be higher and out of your range. Okay, because next season, this is going to branch out from here, and then I can bring it down. I can chop off from here, and I still have the extra branches. But what I really want are these secondary branches, because it's these secondary branches that are giving you that much more yield, okay? So I'm going to keep coming through here, cut this one down, this one can come down, this one, That was 2 at once. And again, these can all be planted, so we're going to start trying that out during the rainy season. All right, so here we are. We're standing in a crop that was harvested just 1 month ago, and with heavy rains, you can see that we're getting very close to our next harvest. So maximum another 3 weeks, we're going to be back in this field harvesting again. And so we've been very blessed with good weather this season. And this is the type of harvesting where you would easily get 5 harvests a year. So this is exciting. This is really great stuff. We're getting a very nice rainy season, good bouts of sunshine, lots of water in the ground, and the crop has been perfectly managed. And this is what you want to see about 1 or 2 months after you've done an initial harvest, is this beautiful, lush regrowth. So that's the beauty of Moringa. It's a sustainable, continuous, how do you call it, renewable resource. And so there you have it. This is our Moringa in transition to more harvest. Yeah. Rambling. All right, so right here you can see on our border, we've planted lira trees. These are now about 6 months old, these ones. And so they're going to grow up and they're going to create a little bit of a shade belt. They're going to create a windbreak for this Moringa crop here. And they're also a valuable resource because we can use them for light construction, craft timber, and also firewood over the years. And they also need pruning. So this one, it has 2 growing out of 1 location. So I'm just going to cut the smaller one, just like that, and put it on the ground. And that's going to give you more production out of this one. And I can also just prune this up because we do want these to grow nice and straight. So I'm just pruning it up a little bit, and I can do the same to this one. It's sending out a big lateral branch here. Well, I don't want that branch. It's going to misshape the wood. So I'm just going to cut it up and then give it a light little haircut. And there's your border planting. This is the lira tree. Beautiful species of tree. To me, the lira tree, Milia volkensi, or Milia volkensi, I kind of have trouble with that name, but we call it the lira tree here. Extremely fast growing hardwood. It's just on the cusp of the hard and soft woods, but it's leaning into the hardwood category. Absolutely drought resistant. It's one of the most drought resistant plants I've ever seen in my life, and it produces a very nice little heartwood, which is really strong when you leave it for a couple of years. In a very short period of time, it produces really good pole wood. It's decent firewood for home cooking. It doesn't have the best smell, so it's not really promoted as that. But this is just a beautiful tree because you also, unlike eucalyptus and other crops, you don't have to spray it with pesticides. It's a natural tree of Africa, and it is absolutely resilient to pests and really harsh weather. And we're also witnessing now that it can actually handle flooding as well, because we have a lower acreage where it's been flooded, but that's another segment. Lira is our favorite tree outside of Moringa for all those benefits, all those reasons. It's another one of those plants that just has so many benefits for us. And so we plant it everywhere and everywhere we can. Okay, so here we have some of our farmers' children, what we call bavubuka. And you can see them moving throughout the landscape, and they go into the various areas where there's local herbs and weeds growing, and they eat this. What did you call it? Mutere. So this one is called mutere. So anybody from Uganda who knows that, you know what this is. But these young boys are now taking this to mom. You're taking it to your mom? And she's going to cook it for them. And that's another example of the type of health benefits that are taking place on the farm. There's no sprays being used, so people are free to go around and forage for their traditional foods, which is a beautiful thing. Okay, guys, wait about that. Okay, so we just finished talking with 2 young boys who were foraging in our crops for traditional herbal medicine and foods. And it's funny because I've been here for 4.5 years on this site, in this territory, and I've learned a lot, okay? But every other day I'm learning new things. That was the first time that I've seen that type of plant. And in Uganda, you have about 60% of the foliage 60% of the plants have known medicinal and edible benefits for human consumption. That's a lot when you consider that Uganda is one of the most biologically diverse countries in the world, let alone in Africa. There's just so much medicine growing in these plots. And by not spraying chemicals and by doing human-intensive agriculture, which means, yes, there's quite a bit of labor involved in weeding and maintaining the gardens, but the weeds are themselves mostly edible. And when people know this and they share that knowledge, that's where you see the concept of food security is, I think, 100% on Priceless Farms or in a permacultural environment like this, because those weeds are getting the opportunity to grow to the stage where they can be picked and harvested and eaten. And that's a continuous ebb and flow cycle from weeding to weed growth, to weeding to weed growth, to weeding to weed growth. And it's exciting to me because when we talk about the herbal medicine markets and we talk about the superfoods markets, many of these African herbs and many of these African plants and spices have not actually been exposed to, let me say, like the Western or the European market base. And even now in Africa, I'm sure there's many different people that are growing up in the cities and they're not knowing about these plants. And so there's potential here to do research with the local people and then bring it to a scientific level where we start to understand which ones are non-toxic, okay, because we don't want to promote anything large scale which has any toxicity. Find out which ones are non-toxic, what are their health benefits, what are their flavors, and bring these plants through our processing facility, ISO standards, to the culinary world, the world of culinary arts. Africa has a treasure trove of plants that are yet to be discovered by all these different culinary arts out there. And so that's really exciting because this is something that as we stabilize as a company and we become more financially stable, we can start to explore new products like this and go into that real discovery mode with the local people supplying us with that initial information. And each and every one that we discover and bring to market is going to increase their income because they are the ones who will be cultivating that when we find a market for it. Hallelujah. Look at this tree. Look at this. This is a musizi tree. David, just give me 2 seconds. Hold on. This is a musizi tree that blew over in last night's storm. I hadn't recognized it until just now. But you can just see where it just snapped right off. That just shows you the force of the winds. And almost all of the trees which have snapped, they all have a big open space in front of them where the wind was able to gain velocity and hit them real hard. So, yeah, that'll bush out and that'll go for firewood and mulch. No problem.